How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number 877-973-7425. We are headed towards a government shutdown. The Democrats deciding they want it. Their voters want congressional leaders to shut things down. They're going to Leroy Jenkins it, go rushing into a shutdown without a cohesive plan. This is from Semaphore, a news site I continue to forget exists. Democrats have new polling to chew over as they rail against Republican government funding bills. It's unlikely to make them more eager to cave. A new survey from the progressive firm Data for Progress and research firm Grow Progress shows 7 in 10 Democrats support their party withholding votes unless Republicans make changes, even if it risks a shutdown, while a similar share backs their party taking a firmer stand than they did in March. What's more, Democrats are arguing voters will blame Republicans who control government for a shutdown, and the poll shows their voters share that view, 82-14. Large majorities of Democrats also think the party should fight Donald Trump harder, even if they don't win. House Republicans plan to vote this week on a short-term spending bill that would extend funding levels through November 21st, with the Senate following suit. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said leaders will put it on the floor as soon as they feel they have the votes, but they'll need the support of at least some Senate Democrats for it to become law. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday expressed vehement opposition to the proposal because it does not include any of the health care provisions they'd sought. Chuck thinks you guys and gals will give him cover and focus less on the shutdown and the harm it does to the country and more on the excuse they use to shut it down, Kennedy told reporters. That'd be Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. House Speaker Mike Johnson said there's zero chance GOP lawmakers agree to reverse any of their changes to the Medicaid program. He added that extending Affordable Care Act subsidies, which are set to lapse at the end of the year and hike premiums, is a December policy issue, not a September funding issue. Senate and House Republicans are in the process of reviewing proposals that could keep the subsidies from lapsing while addressing Republican concerns over costs. Now, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, also went on CNBC to talk about what is a looming shutdown of the federal government. This is the Speaker of the House.
Term, very clean, continuing. We're moving forward productively, but the concern is that we've run out of clock to finish that process. So we need a short-term, very clean, continuing resolution to keep the government open so our appropriators can continue to do their work. Chuck Schumer and Jeffries and the others are opposing that. They're trying to insert partisan political preferences in the middle of a clean funding extension, and it doesn't make any sense, and they're going to lose that battle.
So here's what's going on. The Democrats have become scared of their base. The Democratic base is constantly more and more now radicalized, and they want real fights against the Republicans. They want real fights. And the Democrats have decided, the Democratic base has decided, progressive activists have decided the GOP is always willing to shut down the government. Why don't we do it? Now, in the past, the talking point had been the media would blame Republicans if they shut down the government. But you and I both know the media will blame Republicans if the Democrats shut down the government. And let's just be honest about it. It's true. The Democrats, it's always heads we win, tails you lose when it comes to the media and the Democrats. You see this with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's the Republicans' problem. It's the Republicans' fault. They both sides it and focus on Republicans. They'll do that with the shutdown. But here's something that the Democratic base, because they're emotional, they're not thinking rationally. They're being emotional here. Donald Trump has a bigger bully pulpit than they do. And the public still likes Donald Trump more than the Democrats, even as the Democrats hate Donald Trump. And even as the polling shows Donald Trump doesn't have majority support in the country, more members of the public still support Donald Trump than support the Democrats. And if Donald Trump comes out and says the Democrats shut down the government, he's going to be amplified. And more people will believe him than believe the Democrats. And it may excite the Democratic base. But you know what a shutdown is called, don't you? There's a particular term you need to know about a shutdown. A shutdown is the Russell T. Vote Empowerment Act. The Russell T. Vote Empowerment Act. Russell T. Vote, a dear friend of mine, is the director of the Office of Management and Budget. When the government shuts down, the director of the Office of Management and Budget directs the shutdown for the President of the United States. And you know, the one thing that Russell T. Vote hates more than Democrats? Well, there are a couple of football teams in there, but he really hates big government. And Russ Vote gets to shut the government down if the Democrats refuse to go along with the spending bill. And he will do it in a way that minimizes pain to the voters and maximizes pain to the Democrats' core constituencies. And it'll be the Democrats out there for the very first time in modern history. It'll be the Democrats out there saying, no, senior citizens, you can't get your Social Security checks until the Republicans do what we want. It'll be the Democrats out there saying, no, you can't get into the Smithsonian museums on your school trips until the Republicans give us what we want. It'll be the Democrats telling members of the military and their families, I'm sorry you can't get paid until the Republicans do what we want. It'll be the Democrats doing that, and the media will give them cover. We are about to see the media try to work on their talking points to blame Republicans for shutdown caused by the Democrats because they will not blame the Democrats for it. The spin, I think the spin will be from the media is that, y'all, the Democrats are finally fighting. They figured out how to fight. I don't know that it'll work, though. Now, there's a side note here. This is a very important side note that you got to understand. One of my concerns is you only need a couple of House Republicans to sabotage a clean spending bill. It could be Thomas Massey. It could be Marjorie Taylor Greene. It could be a member of the House Freedom Caucus. You just need one or two Republicans. Really, I think you need three total to say we're not going along with it. And it'll be House Republicans who have killed the bill. And so we got to have every Republican be a team player right now. That includes Thomas Massey, who doesn't like to vote for these things. We can't afford to give the Democrats a reason to point to the GOP and say they're the ones who can't pass it. It's not on us. We got to have a unified Republican Party on this. And that's not easy right now because the Republicans of the House have a number of grandstanders who are totally fine holding everybody hostage to their demands. It's true. You got to acknowledge it. Sometimes there are members of the House Freedom Caucus who want to extract concessions, although the House Freedom Caucus right now, they seem to be in line with the leadership here that let's just do a clean resolution. We'll put everything off until the end of the year. Let's let the Democrats be the one to shut it down. But you got to have everybody on board here. Massey, Green, the rest of them, you got to have them on board. And if you can get the House Republicans to be unified on this, they get it to the Senate. And when it gets to the Senate, it's the Democrats and their filibuster that become the problem. It's the Democrats and their filibuster that obstruct the will of the people and shut down the government of the United States. I got to tell you, I really do think that the Democrats are so convinced they're going to get sympathetic media coverage, that they're not thinking about how Russ Vought orchestrates the shutdown in ways that hurt the Democrats more than anyone else. I don't think they're thinking about that. I think the Democratic base right now is so enraged they can't see straight. You know, there are times people get very, very emotional and they can no longer, they just can't think. They can't think rationally about it. They're so emotional. It's part of what you learn from being a lawyer, I think. I've always kind of had this temperament. But even when I'm in a situation that's bad, I try to step back and ask myself, if I were the lawyer, what would my advice be? Can we think dispassionately about this issue just enough so that if I were the lawyer, here is what I think my legal advice to you would be. And even when I find myself really worked up and emotional about something, I've got a lot of angst about something, I find I'm able to step out of it just a little bit and say, okay, Erickson, let's analyze your problem. Now, let's think about it rationally, not emotionally. There are a couple of cases where it's very hard, but generally just being able to do that. It's a skill you learn in law school, to be dispassionate about things even when you're passionate about them, to try to see the other argument, to try to see the other side, to try to understand where people are coming from so that you can arrive at a solution. When I was a lawyer, I didn't like to deal with the lawyers who their idea was to say no to everything. I always, as a lawyer, when I had a client, I particularly advised companies. I did some schools, some TV and newspapers, and it was always, how can we get to yes? If you, the client, want to get to yes, how can I, the lawyer, protect your interests but get you to yes, as opposed to nope, 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 nope. I think that's being a good lawyer. Your client wants something, you see the pitfalls, you want to protect them, but you also want to get them there. I don't know that the Democrats are looking at it this way. I don't know that they can. I think they're too unhinged, too irrational, too emotional to be able to get to the point where they say, let's avoid a government shutdown. Their base wants a government shutdown. Remember, I read you the other day that report from Axios. It was from back in July, where members of the Democratic Party were telling Axios, congressional leaders, elected Democrats, that the base literally wants the shedding of blood. Like, not metaphorically, the Democratic base literally wants people to bleed in the fight against Donald Trump, and they were scared of the base. The base wanted violence. One of the members of the Democratic Party said, when Donald Trump sets the house on fire, you got to go find some water or an extinguisher. And one of the members of the base said, how about adding more fire to it? That was a member of the Democratic Party attending a rally tells a Democratic member of Congress, burn it all down. They want it all burned down at this moment. So they can't think rationally. They've got to think emotionally. They're going to do their best to think emotionally. They're going to do their best to figure out how to burn it all down. Okay. Burn it all down. And let Russ Vought rebuild it. Because that's where you're headed, Democrats. Russ Vought, who you don't like, is going to be empowered by your shutdown. And I'm okay with that. And here's the thing, honestly, I personally, if I have a dog in the fight, I hope the Democrats do shut it down. It'll be the first time in modern history the Democrats are the ones who actually orchestrated the shutdown, and I think they should. And I think Republicans should say, we're going to let you leave it shut down. We're just going to leave you alone. Y'all wanted it shut down? I mean, the government can't meet. The government can't function. The bureaucracy is shut down. The deep state doesn't get paid. And I'm okay with that. In fact, I have long been an advocate of government shutdowns. I think government shutdowns are a good thing. The less government, the better. And if you can't minimize the government, shut it down so it can't function. And people will locally realize I gotta take care of myself and my family, and the local government and the state government have to do things because the federal government's non-functioning. I think it's a great thing, Democrats, and then let Russ Vought be the one to put the pieces together. Why am I upset with you shutting it out? You guys go Leroy Jenkins this thing, and I want to watch, and I will cheer you on because you have no idea what you're in for. Greetings, conversationalists. I am Eric Erickson here, and the phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, Amir, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the program, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great.
Hey, the shutdown game, we all know how this is going to come. Eventually, they're going to pass something, and it's going to go on. But my thing is this. How about if they shut it down? Like you were saying, you know, people are not going to get paid and all this. We all understand that. But eventually, when they come back, they're all going to get paid, back pay and all this. Why is the system created that way that when they decide not to vote for something, that means they didn't do their job to do something, to come to an agreement? In a private company, when you don't do your job, you have consequences to suffer. So if you guys don't want to agree on something, then nobody gets paid. And when you come back, that's when the clock starts again. You don't get back pay. Nobody. So that they need to feel the heat. Otherwise, I mean, what's the point of them having 1 week not to receive a paycheck or 1 month? These people are usually having millions anyway. Right. They don't care. They don't care about us little people. And now, second question that I have that I had another day that I didn't get my turn. I don't know if I can still do it.
Go ahead. You got about 30 seconds.
Okay. Is about how is this possible that we have senators that are, let's say they're different religions. When they get sworn in as a senator, do they put their hand on the Bible or they put their hand on whatever they choose?
They put their hand on whatever they choose. In fact, some recently, not in the Senate, but in the House, have used the Quran because there actually is a clause in the Constitution that there can be no religious test in government. No one can be forced to adhere to a particular religion before going into Congress. And so, yeah, you can't do that. Now, on the other, I actually think congressional members shouldn't get back pay, but the military, yeah, give them back pay. If there's a shutdown, it's not their fault, the government shutdown, it's just Congress. Eden Pure would like to send you 3 Eden Pure thunderstorms for less than $200, which you can get at EdenPureDeals.com. Use discount code ERIC3, ERICK3, on the front page of that website. The Eden Pure thunderstorm is a small air purifier. It gets rid of pollen and dust and pet dander. It eliminates 99.9% of bacteria and viruses, and it wipes out all odors. In fact, it generates ozone, which floats out into the air. It touches the odor particles, which are considered ionized particles in the air, and it wipes them out. Pet odors, dirty diaper odors, litter box odors. I've used it for smoke odors in hotel rooms and rental cars, and it just works. I've used it on my back porch when the window was cracked open a few weeks ago. In fact, I used one the other day because I made a bad mess in the house and it stunk, and it had to be cleaned up, and it just works. EdenPureDeals.com. You get 3 of them, save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. Yeah, okay. So the courage to tell you the truth, I didn't plan to coordinate that intro with this monologue, but we do have to have a little bit of a talk. We will figure out at the top of the hour what the Federal Reserve decides, looking more and more like a 1/4 point interest rate cut as opposed to a 1/2 point. Buddy of mine, I read an article on Monday, so I did my 4 Things to Know this afternoon podcast yesterday and said a 1/2 point looked to be the consensus. Monday, I saw an article on CNBC that said that, and then a buddy of mine who actually is an expert on this pinged me yesterday and said, actually, it's a consensus is a 1/4 point. We'll find out at the top of the hour what it actually is. The Open Market Committee started yesterday, and we'll get the statement from them here shortly. The forecast now looks like possibly 2 more rate cuts instead of 3 rate cuts. And we'll see where this goes, waiting for Jerome Powell. We'll see if we can bring that to you live here at the top of the hour when this goes through. Right now, the Dow is up 221, S&P down 10, NASDAQ down 105. We will see. But there's a story in the Wall Street Journal. Headline from the Journal: the 2-speed economy is back as low-income Americans give up gains. There are 2 economies in the United States right now. They're moving in different directions. For high earners and many older Americans, the economy looks robust. They are still spending like gangbusters. Their 401k accounts and homes have soared in value. They nabbed 3% mortgages when rates were low. Some might worry about AI eventually coming for their jobs, but now their positions look relatively secure. For many others, momentum has stalled or reversed. The big wage growth experienced by low-income workers during the pandemic has petered out. Those workers are curbing their spending and in some cases are struggling to find jobs. Unemployment for Black Americans and many young people has jumped. Home prices and rents have risen sharply, making housing increasingly affordable. The divided fortunes of rich and poor in the United States may sound like an old story, yet in recent years, workers on the low end of the spectrum began modestly narrowing the gap as acute labor shortages enabled them to switch jobs and bargain hard for better wages. Now the gulf is widening again. For much of the past few years, wages for the bottom third of U.S. earners grew at a faster rate than for the top third. But since the start of the year, top earners have pulled far ahead. As the unemployment rate has slowly crept up and job growth has fallen more sharply, wage growth has moderated, but particularly for low-wage workers, said Aaron Dubb, an economics professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. This is disappointing news for those who were hoping the reversal in wage inequality would be a more permanent feature of the U.S. landscape. In August, annual wage and salary growth fell to 0.9% for the bottom third, the smallest gain since 2016, Bank of America data showed. The top third saw growth of 3.6% year over year, the most since November 2021. That divergence was echoed in year-over-year spending growth in August, with household spending rising just 0.3% for lower-income households and 2.2% for higher-income households. The cooling labor market has fueled much of the divergence, says David Tinsley of Bank of America. Federal job data and Bank of America internal figures suggest that the softening job market is affecting lower-income households more than other groups. The booming stock portfolios of higher-income households are probably also playing a role, providing high earners with confidence to spend more. The top 10% households making more than $250,000 a year account for more of the nation's total spending than ever, 49.2%. compared with 45.7% a decade ago. Wealthy Americans' spending power is continuing to buoy luxury segments of some industries, including airlines and high-end sneakers. Flights to international destinations and in-premium classes are still selling out. Domestic and main cabin sales have softened. And on it goes. You know, one of the major upsides here in the market and the data? There are fewer people in the middle class. Why is that the upside? Because more and more of the middle class has been elevated into the upper income. In fact, now people who make $250,000 a year and they're the top 10%, actually most of those people consider themselves middle class because they haven't felt like they have elevated in society, but actually they have. Here's the problem. I want you to look at the left right now. How angry they are, how emotional they are, how unhinged they are, how combative they are, how defensive of craziness they are, from trans rights to anti-Semitism. Low-income voters are the people who don't turn out in midterms. High-income voters do. The higher your income, the more likely you are to be a Democrat. And the more likely you are to turn out. Low-income voters in this country tend to be more pro-Trump. They tend to be less likely to turn out. And if they continue to feel like the economy is working against them, they may not want the left in power, but they'll think, we got to send a message. We're going to stay home. This summer, the president hit Brazil with a 50% tariff. The price of a pound of unroasted Brazilian beans has jumped to more than $6 from $4.50, according to Dan Hunnewell, the owner of Coffee Brothers, a supplier in New York. The United States has only a few regions suitable for growing coffee. The amount they produce is not significant enough to meet the country's demands. Other countries face lower tariffs, but they can't match Brazil's supply. And as demand increased for beans from alternate sources, prices for non-Brazilian coffee has gone up. Importers are talking about a 10% to 20% increase on the bags they've been purchasing. It could go as high as 50% because as more people move from Brazilian coffee to other coffee from Central and South America, particularly Colombian and Costa Rican, those coffee prices are going up because of the increase in demand. It's a supply and demand issue. The prices of beer have gone up. Why? Aluminum cans from aluminum tariffs. Grocery prices have started going back up. Sales of heavy trucks are falling. That's important. Why is it important? Because when heavy truck sales begin to decline in the United States, they're the most popular vehicles in the United States, and when they begin to decline, it's a leading indicator of recessionary impact. We could still have positive economic growth, but it slows down significantly. The Atlanta Fed has said their internal charting shows actually robust growth of about 3%. The problem here is where's the growth happening? The growth is happening in sectors that benefit higher income households, not low income households. Low income households are starting to feel the effects of the tariffs, and those tariffs are impacting them even at the grocery store. And that's a problem. I'm not going to argue over tariffs. I know many of you are tired of hearing me complain about the impact of the tariffs. Here's my concern, though. It would be dangerous right now for the left to take back any power at all. I think you can recognize that this would be a problem right now when the political left is as unhinged and angry as they are, so worked up over transgenderism. They can't even acknowledge that the Charlie Kirk assassin was on the left. They hate Donald Trump. They don't want to work with Donald Trump. They're willing to shut down the government to stop Donald Trump. You can't reason with them on any issue because it's always but Trump, but Trump, but Trump. I would hate for them to get back into power. But if the economy's not working for Trump's core voters, and that is lower income working class voters, if the economy's not working for them, they're going to feel betrayed. They may not blame Donald Trump, but they will blame Republicans. And the midterms are not about Donald Trump. They're about the Republicans. They're about keeping the Republican control of the House and the Senate. And they may not show up. They may say, screw you guys, epoxy on your houses. None of you are helping me. And in so doing, the Democrats take back the House. You have a swing state in Georgia with the Senate elections and in North Carolina. You got all of these races that we really, really, really need to focus the GOP on. We got the situation in Texas with Ken Paxton versus John Cornyn. If Paxton wins, I want you to be clear here. I'm not saying he will lose the general. I think Paxton will win the general, but it will be extremely expensive for the GOP because he's such a controversial radioactive candidate. He's had affairs on his wife. There have been corruption scandals. There have been federal indictments, been all sorts of things. And you, if you're the base in Texas, you can dismiss it all. You can say, he's a great guy. They cleared him through impeachment, blah, 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 blah. The divorce, the affairs, all of that, it's going to matter to swing voters in the general election. They will make him radioactive and he can win. But every penny extra spent to get him across the finish line that you wouldn't have to use for John Cornyn is a penny that does not go to beat John Ossoff in Georgia. It's a penny that doesn't go to beat Roy Cooper in North Carolina. It's a penny that doesn't go to help other Republicans in swing states get elected. It's a penny that doesn't go to all of these other races where you've got to be on your A game in every single one of them to get elected. And it's a lot of money that gets sucked out of the House seats and out of the Senate seats to get Paxton elected in Texas. And you've got to be on your A game with an economy that's hurting the bottom of society, that's hurting the poor, that's hurting lower income, that's hurting blue collar workers. You've got to be on your A game or they stay home. And one of the ways to be on your A game is to rev up the economy for them. And you know, an easy way to rev up the economy for them is don't have a tariff on coffee. don't have a tariff on grocery imports, on vegetable imports. You can have your tariffs on these countries if you want them, but you can exempt grocery staples and lower those prices. You can exempt aluminum for beer cans. You can do these things and help lower income Americans feel like they're getting something in the economy. The entire point of the tariffs was to resurrect manufacturing in the country. And as people like me warned, you can't do that overnight. But the elections, in the grand scheme of things, happen overnight. And people feel like they're being left behind by this economy. It's no longer Joe Biden's economy. And you can say that it's still Joe Biden's economy. You can say that. You can still say these are effects of Keynesian economics from the Biden administration. These are the effects of overspending in the Biden administration. And now we're pulling back that spending. You can say all of those things. I want you to understand there are legitimate arguments for those things. Whether I agree or not, there are legitimate arguments. We don't have to argue over those things. What I'm saying is that Joe Biden's not president now, and he's not going to be president of the midterms. And so the Republicans have got to have an answer for it. And they can't 2 years in when we get to the midterms say, but Joe Biden, but Joe Biden. That's what the left does with Donald Trump, and it doesn't work with the voters. They see the here and now. The Wall Street Journal is the most Republican-friendly newspaper in America. And when it's saying lower income blue collar voters are saying this economy is starting to not work for them, it should be a big red flag for you. And don't do like the Democrats where you stick your head in the sand and say it's just it's a talking point. It's not real. Look at the economic data. Look at what the Atlanta Fed says about the GDP. I don't care what the Atlanta Fed says about the GDP. I care about what the voters say about the GDP, and the voters are saying it's a problem. It's amazing to me how quickly the Republicans are turning into Democrats with their logic on, no, actually, the economic data says it's good. The statistics say it's good. That's what the Democrats did, and they just lost a massive election because they cited the data, not the voters. I'm sounding the alarm now in the middle of September of the year before the election, not because I want to blow up the GOP, but because I want them to I want them to hear me that you got time to fix this. You have time to fix the problem with the economy. The Federal Reserve cutting rates today is going to help, but it's not going to be the only thing you have the opportunity to do. The lower middle class and lower income voters feel like they're being left behind in the economy. Part of that is seeing the upper income part of the middle class ascending to upper income Americans overall. But Republicans, I'm telling you, if you can't figure out a way to make the economy work for the lower income voters who are your base, who generally don't turn out anyway in midterms, you're going to disincentivize them from even caring about the midterms. And you're going to get the Democrats back in charge of the House of Representatives, if not the Senate. And it's going to be game over for President Trump's agenda. He's not going to be able to get anything done. He'll be fighting impeachment after impeachment after impeachment after impeachment. I don't want the Democrats in charge. So Republicans figure out the economy right now. And I can tell you, I'll be the truth teller to you, and you don't want to hear the truth. Tariffs are part of the problem right now. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here to Springfield, Ohio we go. And Scott, welcome to the show. Scott, how are you?
Doing well. Yourself?
Great. What's going on?
So I just wanted to comment on your last portion. So when you talk about tariffs are hurting us. So it's, from my perspective, our last 4 years, we've just been keeping our head above waters as far as like the lower income and lower middle class families are concerned. And then now for this first couple months, year going on, we're talking about all this money coming in from tariffs and how the economy is looking better and everything. I just haven't felt it yet. I haven't. I know there's a lot of money supposedly coming in on these tariffs, but I'm not seeing where it's doing us in this financial lower income, lower middle class families any better.
Well, and I do have to say, and it's people don't like it when you point it out, but it is true that the money for tariffs is coming from U.S. businesses mostly. It's not coming from foreign countries and businesses. And as a result, wages aren't growing as much as they were because they got to pay the tariffs to the extent that consumers aren't. But yeah, I think Republicans need to be mindful of that. Now, Scott, listen, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a question. How are the Haitians doing?
Fine. I mean, there's nothing really going on major. It's normal everyday life.
Yeah. I was kicking myself when I saw Springfield, Ohio. Wait a second. And then a buddy of mine texted me and says, you didn't ask about the Haitians.
Yeah, it's nothing crazy.
Yeah.
It was blown way out of proportion in my opinion. And it should have never been a standing point to begin with.
I completely agree. But to your point, I hope everybody's listened to you. And thanks for calling in because, Scott is reflective of what the data is showing, that lower income voters who have a higher propensity to vote Republican now, but a lower propensity to turn out in midterms, they're not feeling the economic gains that upper income people are, who have a higher propensity to turn out and a greater propensity to vote Democrat. That's a problem for the GOP headed into the midterms next year. They need to deal with the economy. Now, one of the things that every Republican in Congress should do is go take the capitalism class from Hillsdale College. And then they got a great class on basic economics as well they should take. Every Republican in Congress should. You can take them too completely for free. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. You sign up for Hillsdale College. And you take the classes. They're 30-minute videos you watch from some of the best faculty at Hillsdale. Depending on the topic, depends on the number of videos there are. Some are 10, some are 12. I think there's one that's 7. Depends on the class. They're all 30-minute videos. You learn a lot. In the capitalism class, you learn about what sets it apart, why it's unique, why it's so robust, why it helps more people than other economic systems elevate out of poverty. In fact, we're seeing the middle class in this country elevating into upper incomes because of capitalism. You go to Eric, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. You sign up with Hillsdale College, you take the class, and you learn a lot. You get a certificate of completion. It's just great stuff. When we come back, speaking of the economy, the Federal Reserve, we should have their decision in the next few minutes as to what they're going to do with rates. I will try to get you that news live when we come back, see if we can hear from Jerome Powell as well. He'll be speaking to the country about what they've decided to do. Going to be big news.